With both the reveal trailer and now the gameplay trailer for Battlefield 2042 available for viewing, hype for the game is really starting to take off. The gameplay looks fantastic from what we've seen so far. However, there are a number of things that could cause some major issues with the game's reception in October. The first thing that concerns me is the matchmaking system. Specifically, if they choose to force some sort of a skill-based matchmaking versus prioritizing connection quality and speed to connect to the servers. I want to be clear up front. Skill-based matchmaking, or SBMM for short, is not the same thing as lobby balancing or team balancing. Generally, when people talk about these similar terms, skill-based matchmaking refers to choosing which players the game chooses to group together into the same server or match, while lobby balancing or team balancing refers to how the game divides up those players once the player pool is selected and the match is about to begin or it's already underway. Skill-based matchmaking is a highly debated topic in modern gaming. On the plus side, it creates an environment that is potentially more friendly to brand new players who are lower on the skill totem pole, so to speak, because they're grouped up together with other low skill players, so the overall level of the competition is a bit weaker. On the minus side, matches at the middle to upper end of the skill spectrum tend to be incredibly sweaty and relentless. This forces players to play a very tight selection of weapons, gadgets, and playstyles that are deemed to be the absolutely most effective choices in the meta. Players who choose to not use these few select options often feel that they don't even stand a chance due to the fierce competition and the do anything to win mentality of these really tough matches. I'm personally not a big fan of SBMM in most casual FPS games, though I do think it certainly has a place when you're trying to find a competitive environment to play in. For example, if you're playing ranked Valorant, Counter-Strike, or Overwatch, you probably want those games to be very competitive and full of players at a similar skill level to yourself. After all, that's what most players are looking for in a ranked environment. In casual games though, SBMM can create a painful experience for the top half of the skill ladder, and I feel it also robs players in the lower half of that skill ladder because they don't have the natural joys of progression while working hard to improve at the game. When I started playing Counter-Strike public matches almost 20 years ago, before the rank system was even invented for the game, I remember getting absolutely destroyed in the servers that I joined. It wasn't uncommon for me to only get a few kills and to get a lot of deaths every single match. I'd look up at the top of the scoreboard and see those players who were dominating, and I just wanted to learn how to get better and have scores more like theirs. Over time, I practiced really hard and studied what the best players were doing, and eventually I got a lot better. Unfortunately, skill-based matchmaking often robs players of the sense of progression because improvement that would otherwise be very noticeable is masked by the overall skill level of the competition invisibly rising over time. This isn't really a big deal when you have the ability to choose which server you join directly, but as we've seen with the newer Battlefield titles like Battlefield 5, it's very likely that the next Battlefield game will try to route players directly into the game by picking a particular playlist to join through the UI instead of just picking servers directly. For players who are far below average and can't seem to get kills in the regular multiplayer, we've already heard news that there will be some AI bots available, so these players can set up games that are a little bit easier while they learn the ropes and eventually they can join the regular competition. Again, I want to emphasize, this is different from team balancing, which I actually think is a good thing for the game if it's implemented correctly. Most players don't enjoy games where one team is essentially spawn trapping the other one for the whole match. It causes players to leave the game early and generally just isn't a fun experience. I do hope that whatever team balancing they might choose to implement focuses on keeping squads together. Playing older Battlefield titles and getting ripped away from your squad of friends every time the server tries to balance is really frustrating. I'm genuinely a bit nervous that vehicles might have an unbalanced role in Battlefield 2042. As we saw with the recent gameplay and reveal trailers, vehicles seem to be a big focus of the new game. Of course, this makes sense in a game featuring a modern to near future flavor of Battlefield. Tanks, choppers, jets, and apparently the Boston Dynamics robotic dog with a machine gun on its back will all be powerful units on the battlefield. DICE has also already commented that squad play will be a big focus for vehicles in BF 2042. This both excites me and kind of terrifies me. I have great memories of playing BF2 with friends back in the day and fully loading up an APC to go wreak havoc on some conquest points. Running around with a squad of buddies is a core element of the Battlefield experience, and I'm happy to hear that they're focusing on this style of play. However, overpowered vehicles are perhaps the most frustrating thing for me as an often solo player just looking to hop into a server without squatting up first. When I started playing Battlefield 4 again several months ago, it was so common to join a server on maps like Goldman Railway where the entire enemy team seemed to be occupying a tank, a chopper, or a jet the entire game with 100 kills and 0 deaths because our poor team couldn't manage to get a single squad of engineers together to take them down. I think if vehicles are too weak, they don't pose a threat on the battlefield, and that's a problem for that immersion factor into the all-out war style of gameplay that we've all fallen in love with. But when there's not sufficient counterplay to take out these vehicles, the games get tiring really fast. I think this critical balance of matching vehicle strength to countermeasures that allows infantry to take them out is critical for the success of Battlefield 2042, especially since we're going to be playing on 128 player servers for the first time. I'd love to see some skill-based gadgets that make taking out these vehicles doable as a solo infantry player as long as you've practiced enough with your loadout. This probably surprises nobody, but hacking and cheating concern me quite a bit too, the bane of modern FPS games all over the planet. Cheating in games seems to be at an all-time high. The biggest cheat providers are printing money like crazy, and unfortunately, I don't see that changing anytime soon without some major systemic changes to how cheating and providing cheats is handled legally. The cheat-making industry is, plainly said, incredibly lucrative. Even in games like Valorant that require root-level access to your PC, cheaters are still present, and the developers who make these cheats seem to be always one step ahead of those in charge of detecting them. From what I understand, the Asian market in particular is really struggling with cheaters in the most recent Battlefield games online, but it's certainly a problem in every market, and a new game like Battlefield 2042 is going to draw a lot of attention from the cheat developer marketplace. I am really hoping that DICE has some intense plans to counteract this cheating before it becomes a massive problem in the new game. Outside of Battlefield, I play a lot of Destiny 2, and cheating has basically ruined the competitive experience for several months now, seeming to get worse every year. Warzone has also been plagued by cheaters as well, despite reports of the developers banning huge waves of accounts on a regular basis. I think the fact that Battlefield 2042 will not be free to play, at least at launch, will help to deter a large number of people who would otherwise go burn one account by cheating and then spin up another free account once they got caught. Needing to buy another account at full price starts to really add up, and hopefully that will keep some cheaters at bay. Ideally, DICE and EA will have a strong multi-pronged strategy ready to go at launch, including a rock-solid anti-cheat for the game itself, and a legal strategy similar to what we've seen from Bungie and Riot Games lately, where they're willing to aggressively go after cheat developers in the courtroom to dissuade any sort of other developers making these hacks. Looking at past releases of Battlefield games, I'm pretty concerned about 2042 having a rough launch. One full of bugs, poor server latency, disconnects, and crashes. In modern game launches, it's almost a miracle for a game to have a clean launch on day one. Nearly every big title seems to have some huge server overcapacity issues, frequent disconnects, and generally a rough experience for players who want to get into the fight right away. On top of this, the Battlefield franchise is known for having some pretty rough launches when games first come out. Battlefield 4 was nearly unplayable at launch, and Battlefield Hardline 1 and 5 have each had their share of launch issues as well recently. I'm hoping that Battlefield 2042 breaks this trend and is the first Battlefield game in a long time to have almost no significant day one issues. As we've seen with the recent downfall of games like Cyberpunk 2077, a rough launch can absolutely destroy the hype around a game and turn players who were super excited to play into detractors who quickly want a refund and give up hope on the game's future. Luckily, we do have some alpha and beta testing phases coming this summer, which should identify most of the major problems with the game, especially with stress testing the server capacity with some real players. Let's hope that at the least, DICE will be on the ball and ready to fix any major issues that pop up quickly during the launch, especially since this is one of the longer windows between game releases in Battlefield history, so hopefully there's been enough development time to work out most of the major kinks. I guess we'll find out in October. Finally, my last concern is the microtransaction system, probably the most complained about aspect of games published by EA in the last decade. As a surprise to literally no one, microtransactions are a hot topic when it comes to gaming. We've seen time after time how publishers will influence games to have pay-to-win scenarios where only the players who are willing to break out their wallet can have the best items in a reasonable time frame. From all the news that I've seen so far covering Battlefield 2042, it seems that the microtransaction system will primarily be through a premium battle pass that offers cosmetic-only items. I think this is a good decision, and hopefully DICE and EA have learned from the previous mega failures like the launch of Star Wars Battlefront 2 and won't be giving players who pay more money any type of advantage in the game. I realize that at the end of the day, EA is a for-profit organization and they have a duty to their shareholders to make the most revenue that they can from the game. I don't have a problem with that as long as it's done in a reasonable way. My hope for 2042 is that aside from purchasing cosmetics like weapon skins, player model skins, vehicle skins, and more, we can also earn some of these really cool items from in-game pursuits that challenge players to overcome skill-based obstacles for some items and maybe more of a pure grind and dedication for others. Having these quests to do difficult things in order to earn cosmetics keeps more players around and engaged with the game, and I think that's a good thing for the long-term health of Battlefield 2042. Let me know in the comments what topic you'd like to see me cover next. I'd really love to hear from you. If you haven't seen it already, I created another video outlining what it would take to rank Battlefield 2042 into the S tier compared to other past Battlefield games. It's the video on the top right of your screen and also linked in the description.